So, right, first off, it's awesome that Days Gone is on PC now. It's probably it's actually a really cool kind of thing that you're kind of the vanguard of Sony's PlayStation's kind of foray into PC gaming. So, congratulations, that must feel like awesome.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, surprising.
and yeah, no, so I played Days Gone for the first time earlier this year. It was probably like January, February time, and I actually enjoyed it way more than I thought I would initially. It's actually a really, really solid game. I enjoyed it a lot. And I felt that Deacon was a really interesting, engaging character. So, just kind of first off, what are some of your favorite elements about Deacon as a character? Um, and, how much of you went into that character?
Well, we tried a lot of different versions of Deacon. The early versions were rather funny, actually. They were very comedically charged, and we ended up going away from that because we built into the schedule was a lot of experimentation. We would shoot certain scenes and then we would reshoot them, and we would try to different tones. I didn't quite understand what you were doing until it was explained to me. Basically, the tone that John Garvin and Ben Studios and Sony all agreed on. Apparently, they all had to come to a consensus about this. And the tone that they liked the best was the hyper realistic, this is really happening tone. So, as an actor, if you're going to tell me, no, we're going as real as possible, then I'm like, okay, well, then one, every word that comes out of this guy's mouth is going to be some sort of a little bit of warning, a growl, something, because in a world where this has really happened, showing weakness is something you can't do. So even when he's being nice to people, he's got to have an edge up. I could shoot you right now. Don't even look at me funny, you know. So there was that, you know, and then the other thing was that in video games there's this whole thing where characters basically the character talks to the player. The character goes, "I found this USB stick. What could it mean? I'll bet it's a clue. I should go left." You know what I mean? And as well as they've been performed, generally it's always a conceit of gameplay. It's like an inner monologue. So I decided if we're going to go hyper realistic, let's make it so that Deacon is saying all these things. He's actually talking to himself. Let's try that. Let's try that Deacon is fully muttering to himself throughout this entire experience. Because I don't think that I would be fully sane if Days Gone was really happening. And then, of course, when lockdown hit with COVID, and I started talking to myself, I was like, oh, I think that was a good call. So, at the end of the day, it's interesting because the heart of Deacon, I think, is a really warm, affable guy. But we had to cover it up with a bunch of really, really bad behavior because he lives in a world where if you show any of that warmth or vulnerability, you get killed. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a really good analogy actually. The lockdown thing, because I did the same thing. I was talking to myself for the better part of last year, all the
I
time.
talk to myself every day. And thank God I have dogs because I talk to them, so that gives me a little bit of an excuse.
I have a cat, the exact same thing. Um, yeah, so is that quite typical then for to kind of like workshop characters
No,
in that way?
no, no. For Force Unleashed, I was given a full script, which is basically a Star Wars movie. Hayden Blackman wrote full script, threw it in front of me, and so it was clear how to approach the job because it was like everything else that I did. It was on camera and everything, so I basically just approached it like I would approach any character and sort of plotted out for myself what character elements to show when and all that stuff. Um, but with Days Gone, because the story was evolving and we were shooting little bits, and John would give me all the information he had at the time, but he didn't have a full picture just yet. So it was sort of this weird kind of 4 years of evolving a story while you shoot it. Which I mean, it makes a little bit of sense to me because as a musician, when I write, I'm recording the songs I write. And then, like, first, I released this record. It's gonna have cassette. There you go. But this, with like the Crashtones record is actually the written or I'm sorry, the audio record of me writing those songs. So there's a certain freshness to the song, a certain roughness around the edges, a sense of this is the first time it's being done, first time it's being performed. There's a specialness to when something is done for the first time, and it's one of the great things about mocap is that you don't have to worry about matching. So if I'm on a film set and let's say you and I have a scene and I'm talking to you, and I say, okay, look, you got to tell me where you put the money. Drink. You got to tell me where you put the money? And then take two. Okay, you got to tell me where you put the money. Drink. Okay, you got to tell me where you put the money. And then take three. You're going to tell me where, Sam, you put this up the wrong time. You got to tell me after you say money, then you take the drink. And so for every angle, you have to basically match your performance. You can do different takes and different interpretations within the limitations of the physicality of the performance that you do, right? So that when the editors get together and they put together all the angles, those performances match. With mocap, because it's all being mapped into a computer, my face is being tracked by a camera, it has dots all over it. My body's being tracked by all the cameras around the room. The audio is being recorded. Everything is being recorded in the computer. And what they're going to do is pick the camera angles later. They're going to place the camera. Once they have the performance in the computer, they're going to move the virtual camera and create the scene. So from a theater sense, we have to give them one take that works all the way through, right? But just one. That means that if Deacon goes, hey, where'd you put the money? Sit. That would be one take. Another take would be like, where did you put the money? And he's going to smash you in the face with it. I could do whatever I wanted because that take never had to be matched against anything else. It was just they needed one take all the way through. So the unpredictability thing that I was talking about, you want to feel like something is happening for the first time. Now, one of the struggles as an actor, film and television, is you're trying to make it as fresh as possible. But when you've done it 15, 16 times at different angles, it's hard to keep it fresh. You're trying to invent as much newness as you can each take. Whereas mocap, each take can be completely its own thing, which I just really loved that. So the same thing with the music thing. When I recorded it, I'm like, I bet if I actually, because the prevailing wisdom is you make a demo version of a song, and you really learn that song, and then you refine it, then you record the real version. And I was like, well, what if the demo that I'm recording while I'm writing it is the real version, and that's the one that I built. So for my part, I always love it, be it on camera, mocap, voiceover, when something unpredictable happens. That's the whole key of how to make these storytelling beats exciting, is really capture something that's never really going to happen again. It's unpredictable. Even the actor didn't know he was going to do it. And certainly for Days Gone, because I wanted a hyper-realistic feel, everything had to feel very spontaneous. So for that reason, John Garvin was like, look, if you end up ad-libbing here and there, changing words, just do it. Don't worry about it. Don't even sweat it. Just go. Whatever's happening in the moment, go with it. And I feel like I feel like you could, that is in there. When I watch the cutscenes or when I play Days Gone, it does feel very spontaneous. Like the characters all surprise. So you're going to find that every answer to every question that you give me is a long answer.
That's all right. Look, I'd much rather have more rather than less, for sure.
No, use whatever you want. It's totally cool.
I appreciate that. Actually, kind of just running with that, you kind of hinted in it there, but that difference between The Force Unleashed and Days Gone, obviously there's quite a difference in time between the two games. What's it like to be a voice actor in 2021? How has the experience changed from something like The Force Unleashed time-wise to something like Days Gone now?
Well, the technology is totally different. Back when we did Force Unleashed, that was ILM that we were working with, which was very thrilling. The tech was completely new. So it ended up with Force Unleashed, the mocap was actually, because the pipeline just couldn't be built in time, the mocap was actually, I think, used very little bit and then mostly used for reference. There are moments in Force Unleashed where I'm like, okay, that little smirk there, I know I did that on this, I remember doing that. Whereas Days Gone, the tech is so good that there were times where I felt like I was just watching a TV show that I shot, because as an actor, even though I don't like watching myself that much. You do it. You do watch yourself because you need to know how it's coming off. And there are certain things that I know that I do, little quirks that I have. And when I saw the character in Days Gone have those same facial quirks and stuff, I was like, wow, the technology is really, it's come a long way. Force Unleashed was only facial cap with video reference for everything else, but it was, and then Days Gone was facial cap, body cap, audio, all the same thing. So very, very different. But to go forward, making both of them, they're on camera gigs. To go forward with the voice actors thing that you were asking about, the pandemic has made me happier than ever that I built a studio in my backyard, because I've done a lot of voiceover work back there over the lockdown here at home, which is really it's a really cool thing to make your coffee in the morning, be in your sweats, go over to your studio and be like, I'm going to work now, kids, say to my dog, and then go in the backyard and go into my guest house and
yeah. Well, what we've kind of noticed at Voquent is that things like home studios have been a massive boon for people during the pandemic, for sure. Definitely.
Well, and it's kind of, people need to, everyone's brushing up on their tech skills. You need to know what mic you're using, how the pre works, headroom issues, and then also Source Connect and all these things. And people are getting quite good at it, actually. And then also make sure your room sounds good. Now I understand that it doesn't always work out. I mean, I know that there's been a lot of things that have to be re-recorded professionally because actors didn't necessarily have it all down. And frankly, they should be concentrating on acting and not necessarily all the technical stuff. But I'm a tech geek, and I already had the studio for music purposes, so I was actually thrilled to kind of flex my tech muscle and be like, look how good my stuff sounds, man. That type of thing.
So there's quite a nice little overlap. So yeah, just to kind of change speeds real quick. So obviously you've done a lot of work as Darth Maul, which I always found fantastic. To me, the stuff that you've done on the Clone Wars is kind of the definitive version of the character, especially there in season 7. Like, oh, beautiful. What process did you have for uncovering some of the vocal traits and that you put into the performance of this character, who was, for all intents and purposes, established?
Well, go back to the beginning. Yeah. All right. You ready for another long answer? I went from Force Unleashed. Dave hired me for Clone Wars because of Force Unleashed. I've never actually asked him what that process was, so I actually don't even know why I'm here with you. Like, because those jobs, the Lucasfilm jobs, have been incredibly generous and incredibly good to me. Those people have been amazing to me over, like 13 or 14 years now, hiring me for, look, they've hired me for a lot of things that people don't even know that I've done for them. They just kind of keep me around, which is really fun. But so I would love to ask Dave at some point. Like, I've never asked you, why the hell did you hire me? I never really understood that. Anyway, Force Unleashed happened, and it was a big hit. So I figured, okay, well, they're pulling over Clone Wars, sure. And I thought they were going to give me like 3 lines, and it was going to be a little press thing. And I was very happy to do that because when Clone Wars came out, I was not a huge fan. By second season, I was. I saw how the show was progressing. I saw what they were getting better at, and I started getting very interested in those stories. And this was before I really knew that this was George's show, right? I didn't really know that George had a very active hand in these stories, that Dave and them were executed, and they were the boots on the ground, but George was the general, right? So, they invite me to come over and do a character called the Son of Mortis, or what is now known as the Mortis trilogy. And again, I thought it was going to be like, oh, it's 3 lines or so. And it wasn't. And they kept saying, oh, it's a cool job. It's really cool. Oh, what is it? Oh, it's really cool. Well, I already said yes. You don't have to say it's really cool. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Oh, it's really cool. Okay, what is it? What am I doing? And they're like, okay, well, listen, you're playing the dark side of the Force. And I had just finished with Force Unleashed, feeling like I had dodged a bullet with Star Wars fans because Starkiller was like much loved. Now he was popular and everyone liked him, which I felt like, thank God, because people might not have liked him and they may have hated me personally for having ruined it for somehow. Star Wars fans are not shy about telling you when they think that you didn't do a good job. And I'm a Star Wars fan, so I didn't want to let them down. Anyway, so here I am, Clone Wars, and I'm in the room now with, they're airing season 2, but the people that I'm in the room with are the season 3 versions of these actors. This is Matt Lanter having done Clone Wars now for 3 seasons, because you record a year in advance, right? So I'm with these people who are 3 years into this gig. James Arnold Taylor is nailing it, and Matt Lanter is awesome, and Ashley is just killing it, and even Dee, who was only there for a few seconds, terrific. Well, I mean, Dee is obviously terrific. And here I am, and I don't know why they've selected me, and I don't know what to do with the character. And there's 3 episodes, and I'm just like, this is, and I was starting to lose confidence throughout the first record of the first episode. And thankfully, the Son of Mortis in that first episode only has a few lines. But the next episode gets tons of lines. So at some point, I raise my hand and I go, hey, listen, Dave Filoni, who I don't know at this point very well, are we concerned that this voice that's coming out of my mouth for this character sounds too much like Starkiller? And Dave, being a very good director, was watching an actor sink, watching an actor lose confidence. So he did what any good director does. He lied to me. And he says, well, listen, man, don't worry about it, because your character, Starkiller, had a very close connection with the dark side of the Force, and the Son of Mortis is the dark side of the Force. So it's okay if they sound alike. And I was like, oh, really? Yeah. Okay. And I had some sense that I'm like, he's making this up. But then I went home and I'm like, yeah, he made that up to help bolster my confidence, but that's a really cool idea. In fact, that should be the hook for the character. But the only way that that's going to work is if you hear all of the dark side villains in this one character's voice. So it couldn't just be, Starkiller, system, sort of a kind of an impassive, removed Starkiller. But he had to eventually go down here, and then come up and go, and a little Vader and a little this, and a little that. And it also necessitated that if there was a line that was similar to something we saw in any of the Star Wars movies, copy that line read, right? Generally in Clone Wars, the wisdom was don't ever copy the line read. In fact, they stopped quoting like early Clone Wars, they're always like, I've got a bad feeling about this, and they say, here's where the fun. They kind of quote the movies, and then they realized we got to stop doing that. We got to make our own quotes so people start quoting us, But in those Mortis episodes, we were, I was like, okay, what if I try to make it so that he's all those different characters? Just try to little hints of Palpatine and Vader, Dooku, and Maul, even though I hadn't done Maul yet. Anyway, so in the second episode, I start performing the character, and Dave stops me at some point. He goes, I think I know what you're doing. I'm like, yeah, should I do it less? He's like, no, do it more. You have to do it more. That's the character. That's how this character is going to work. And so then we started playing with it, sister, so is you brother Fred. Like little, but it's subtle, right? It's not fully there. And so after we went through that whole process of the next 2 episodes and playing with those ideas, Dave sent me off and goes, like, man, it's great working with you. Really had a good time. I think these are going to be good episodes. Cut ahead many months later, and we're doing pickups for those episodes, and we're because they're going to air in maybe 2 or 3 months, right? Pickups meaning like a few extra lines. By the way, are you cool with me giving you the long answer to these? Because
I love the long answer.
Right. So we're doing pickups, and I'm seeing some of the scenes, and they're kind of incredible. And Dave is like, oh, by the way, we cut that scene with Darth Revan. I'm like, well, why? It's like, George thinks it's confusing. Well, why is it confusing? Because the Sith can't live beyond death. And I'm like, what? And he's like, no Sith ghosts? He's like, no, not in George's universe. I'm like, what do you mean? Tell me what's going on? You know, I'm like, I'm so excited as a Star Wars fan to be learning more mythology about the dark side. And he says, no,
I remember
Sith are.
seeing the scene, the Revan scene on YouTube after it was cut like years later. I was like, ugh, what?
And George was like, look, that wasn't what was intended. What's intended is the Sith are obsessed with their own mortality. And because you can't take it with you, you accumulate wealth and relationships and all this stuff. And if they die, then the most important person in the galaxy is lost themselves. And all of the wealth and all of the power that accumulated just evaporates. And they can't allow that. It's why you can scar Vader, destroy him, and mess him up, and throw him into a lava pit. And he's going to hold on to that painful existence because the alternative is to let go of everything and lose everything. You know, he's the same thing with Palpatine. He can have his face melted off, but that's not important. What's important is that he had power. You know, Maul cut him in half. He'd be driven mad, but he's not going to let go of himself. He's going to jealously hold on to himself the way he holds on to everything he accumulates. In the case of Maul, well, we'll get to that. So he explains this to me, and I'm like, "This is so cool." We're talking about it, and then we do these pickup lines, and then afterward we sit down and we're in the. I remember we were at LA Studios, and he says, "Hey, so you know you have some friends in the company. I'm sure you've heard we're going to bring them all back." I'm like, "Yeah, I heard about that." And he's like, "What do you think about that?" I'm like, "I don't know, man. That is." That's risky. Is that a good idea? It's like, well, it's George's idea. It's what he wants to do. I'm like, okay. And then he goes, well, great, man. Well, you know, I hope to see you again. I think we might have something for you in the future. And I'm like, oh, like a 2-3 line bounty hunter thing. And he's like, yeah. I didn't really realize that he was trying to tell me something at that point. You know, start thinking about this. And it had everything to do with the conversation we had about the Sith holding on to what they have. That he was passing me hints, which Dave loves to do. He loves to do that. He loves to. There are things he'll tell you that you will not understand until 2 years later. You know, he was telling you something. Anyway, cut to later, and I get this enigmatic messages from Lucas phone saying a call is coming for you. Okay, it's a really cool call. Okay, it's coming from Dave. Okay, and Dave at this point now, me and him are friends. At this point, we're buddies, or at least getting there, on our way to being buddies. And so anyway, I'm driving one day, going over actually to Drew Struzan's house, legendary poster artist. He's worked on so much Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and that stuff. So I'm going to Drew Struzan's house, and I get a call from Dave Filoni. So I have the good sense to pull over because I've been warned about this call. So I pull over the car, and Dave gets on the phone. Hey, Sam. Oh, hey, Dave. And not forget, he wasted zero time. He goes, okay, I'm just going to get to it. I need Darth Maul. Can you do it? And I was like, frozen. Couldn't think, I was like, and the inflection in his voice, it was clear. He wasn't saying, are you interested? Do you want to do this? You think it'd be fun? Can you do it? Meant, be honest with me. Is it a mistake to hire you for this? Be honest with me because we have to succeed at this. Like you said, it's a risky move. So I need Darth Maul. Can you do it? And I could feel this was important to him, that he needed this to work out. So, I did what he did to me. I lied to him. I said, yeah, of course I can do it. No problem. I can do it right now, but I just don't do it. You're not paying me to do it right. So then he said, all right, listen, think about this. It's this and that. It's going to be some really weird, tortured stuff. We're going to get on the phone. We're going to talk about this a lot before we go and record this, but I'm going to give you all the information I have. I'm like, okay, wow. So then you're going to get off the phone, and I'm sitting there, and again, I feel like I dodged a bullet with Star Killer. And then I had to play the dark side of the Force, which is something you don't want to ruin. And I feel like I dodged a bullet with that. And now I feel like there is a sniper bullet, and the red dot is already on. No, forget sniper. It's the Predator. The 3 red dots are on my forehead, and I'm hearing, and I'm about to get destroyed. And, I was thinking, what the hell did I say yes to and all this stuff? But then the wonderful thing is that Dave furnished me with every bit of information that he possibly could. Every conversation he had with George, everything that they were going to do visually, everything he knew about the arc of the story and where it was going up until that point. And we ended up talking over and over again, having these like multi-hour conversations about Gollum, Lord of the Rings, about Khan from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. And then I was like, what about Colonel Kurt's Apocalypse Now? George was supposed to direct that. It seems to me that this story is very Heart of Darkness with Savage. He has to essentially go down, to find Colonel Kurtz, and go into this dark, follow in the footsteps of the darkness that led Colonel Kurtz into that cave. And it was also very sort of Greek mythology. He has to go into the underworld. Essentially, he has to go to hell to find his dead brother and bring him back to the living. And so all of this, we discussed all of this stuff over and over again and discussed how it should be. Now, the cool thing with Dave is he never, ever said, here's how I want the voice to sound. All he did was, here's what we think the character should be. And one of the first things that, we were like, well, it doesn't make sense. Everyone's depicted Maul as this sort of strong, silent type. That doesn't make any damn sense. We're ditching that. It's gone. Which, again, already feels like hubris because you're like, and we would talk about this, we're like, you can almost only fail trying to do what we're about to do because the character is already so popular. And all he said in the movie was, let me see if I can remember. Effectively, sparsely populated with traces direct and reflect quickly master. And then there is, at last we will reveal ourselves to Jedi. At last we will have revenge. And then there is, yes, my master. And that's it. That's all he says. And here, me and Dave are like, yeah, we're going to tell you what he's really like. And he actually is really verbal, super articulate. And but we were like, look, George feels like he's like this. And there's a rule of two. And if you can only select one apprentice in the rule of two with a Sith, that apprentice can't just be a guy who's good at doing flips and slicing with a lightsaber. He's got to be good at everything. He's got to get straight A's across the board. He's got to be diplomatic. He's got to be manipulative. He's got to be brilliant, strategic, tactical. He's got to be charming. He's got to be all those things. So then we also talked about the plan of, because I was like, look, we also have to temper fan expectations. So we're going to do this crazy spider creature, which is essentially the madness of the dark side. We're going to show that on full display. We're going to show you the screaming madness that Vader hides behind his mask. You know what I mean? We're going to, like Maul is no longer strong enough to keep that inside. It's going to be all over the place. Show you the madness of the dark side. But I'm like, but then Dave, what we got to do is the moment he comes back to sanity, it's got to be Phantom Menace Maul, or as close as we can get for the rest of that episode. And then Dave's like, yes, exactly. He's like, Dave's like, we start layering in the character that we see in our head. Like, yes, piece by piece, adding character elements and character traits, episode by episode. And we thought that if we do this right, smash you in the face with the spider thing, shock the fans, then give you what you thought you were going to get for a moment, and then build off into this other character. We thought that this might be how the fans could acclimate to this character. On top of the fact that George is just telling a very, very cool story, the cost of the dark side, the cost of how jealously these people hold on to their mortality because they are the most important thing in the galaxy. So even, Maul, who's wants to gather power, gather wealth, gather this, gather that. Well, if he's thrown in a garbage planet, he starts gathering garbage around him. And the garbage becomes so important to him that it becomes a part of him and it starts sticking to him. And the dark side starts animating the garbage into these spider legs, and it's like wicked, crazy, never been done in Star Wars stuff, very risky stuff. So, but anyway, all is to say, these are the conversations we were having. And the reason I'm sort of giving you the long story of what we were talking about and all this stuff is to give you a sense of those were the conversations. It wasn't, I want him to sound like this. Make him gruff. Make him more of this. No. It was all about who is he at his core? Where did he come from? What is his background? Why did he get here? What is he trying to do? What is he trying to accomplish? And we started getting into this idea that he's stuck in this rut, this circular path, which Freddie Prinze Jr. very articulately nailed when he said Maul is Sisyphus. figure in mythology who pushes the boulder all the way up the hill and gets to the top, and then slips, and then the boulder rolls down the hill, and then he's going to start all over again. You see that reflected even in the early Clone Wars episodes, and certainly through Rebels and all that stuff. But Sisyphus also has the reputation for being the man who cheated death twice. So even that fit with the mythological, themes of what we were doing. So we were talking about all this stuff. George was very interested in the mythology of this all, and reflecting not only our shared mythologies, on this planet, but also his Star Wars mythology, which fleshed it out. So this is why the Star Wars gigs are so much fun. Because, dude, I will tell you right now, like, I was doing a show that I will not name. I've been on some wonderful shows, and I've been at the shows that really care about character and story and stuff like that. And I've been on shows that's just not how they do it. They just say your lines and go home. That's it. So I was on a show where I could get no answers about anything that I was doing, and I was just going to say my lines. This is on a live action set, tons of money being burned. And no one would tell me anything. Okay, I'd say my lines. Then I go over to Dave. And for Clone Wars, I'd have maybe 2 pickup lines, right? I got to get 2 lines. They changed 2 lines. Dave would go into a 15-minute monologue about why we're changing those lines. Here's where the character was at. You remember the story points and this and that, and George wants this, and this is what George is going for, and this is why this story is important to tell in this way, and this is why we're changing these lines. By the time he got done with his monologue, you were so ready for those lines. You were so anxious, so in a good mood about it. So ultimately, this is why Dave Filoni is taking over the world right now, and running these incredible shows, because it's all about story, it's all about mythology, it's all about this world, it's all about these wonderful tales that really resonate with people. Dave, man, I gotta say, like, those monologues he would give, he would do that at the top of these Rebels Clone Wars reports. He would get the whole cast together, and then he'd go up on a tear about what the story was and what George wanted, and what are the key things you have to remember, and what are the things you don't have to just disregard. Don't worry about it. We're going to stretch off in this direction. Why younger people need to have these hopeful stories, all this stuff. And you would inspire all of the actors every time. I've always said that if you could get all of those monologues, recorded and on tape, you could sell a hell of a DVD, and people could be really educated on what Star Wars is. So anyway, this is why we all love to work on the Star Wars stuff, because this is the type of stuff that happens. This is the type of detail that we can go into, this type of character they put into it. And at the time, Clone Wars was just an underdog show. It wasn't very widely watched. We all did it because we thought it was cool. Now, kind of had a decade, and it's this giant hit. We're like, okay, never saw that coming, but that's cool. But we only ever did it because we liked it. We thought it was well done. We thought it was cool. It's not like you get paid the kind of money that you get to go off in a live action set, and it's not about that. It never was about that. It's about the love of that mythology, the love of George Lucas's world, and the love of working with the guys talented as Dave Filoni. That's why you do it. I remember doing some of the early Darth Maul records in Montreal, because I was doing a show called Being Human at the time. And we had to get a studio in Montreal so that I could record remotely. And I remember the studio people who ran that studio took me aside during the break, and they said, "Tell us about this Dave Filoni guy." I'm like, "Why? What's going on?" And he's like, "Well, we haven't really heard about this Clone Wars show, so we're interested in what you guys are doing, because we're Star Wars fans, so we don't know about this. But who is he?" I'm like, "Well, he's sort of George's protege. He's just the apprentice." And he said, "Well, listen, we've all worked on tons of big movies and TV shows. We've never heard someone be this precise and this good at getting what he wants. Like, this guy's an incredible director." I'm like, "He is an incredible. He's really, really, very, very talented and very smart." And so yeah. Anyway, there's my long story to my question.
No, that's extremely interesting. I remember watching a I think it was an interview with Dave Filoni where he was talking about the prequels, and you know, it clearly has this way of bringing you around to understanding it on a much deeper level. And I'm kind of like, yeah, you know what? There are really good points.
Dude, well, here's the bottom line, Dave. I mean, dude, Dave would call me up on his way back from Skywalker Ranch after a full day of working for Hormones, and he'd instigate a conversation about Luke Skywalker, and we would talk about Luke Skywalker for his 40-minute drive home. I mean, to work a whole day on Star Wars and then call your buddy and be like, "Hey, dude, let's talk about Luke Skywalker for a second." And then we would talk about how, look, it's not this is not a character, nor is it a franchise about. Everyone talks about who's more powerful, which Jedi is the most powerful. It's Starkiller is more powerful, and powerful. Who can do more Force stuff? Powerful. It's like that's not what it's about. Luke is the best example of a Jedi because Luke has the biggest heart. Because he doesn't win the day by doing a more powerful flick. He doesn't win the day by shooting fire out of his hands. Or, he doesn't win the day by chopping the bad guy's head off. He doesn't do any of that. He wins the day because he sees a compassionate solution where even Obi-Wan and Yoda can't. Because Obi-Wan and Yoda are like, that guy, he can't be saved. He's like, I think he can. How? I'm not sure. Well, then, what do you mean you're not sure? I don't know. But I'm going to have to go and just look him in the eye. No, don't do that. Terrible idea. Well, the Emperor has already won. You were only hope. I know, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to kill my own father. All that stuff. And he wins the day. He wins Star Wars by throwing down his weapon and saying, I'm a Jedi, like my father before me. Dude, I'm getting goosebumps even thinking about it. It's like Luke has the biggest heart, so he is the finest Jedi. He's the real deal. He has nothing to do with powers and abilities to be able to shoot blasters out of your hands or nothing like that. So we had those conversations, and the more that I've gotten in tune with what's important here with Star Wars, I think the better the performance is. Dave surely feels that way, and that's why he talks to his actors. And one of the fun things here, just as a side note, when we were doing Maul for Rebels, Dave first of all, he purposely told Taylor Gray to not watch Star Wars, which is really funny, right? Don't. He's like, well, I never watched it. I should watch the stuff. And Dave's like, hold on. Eventually, I want you to watch it. No, don't do it. Because he knew Freddie was a huge Star Wars nerd. He's like, well, Freddie's the teacher. He plays King. Taylor doesn't know Star Wars. So when I arrived on that record, first of all, they were all so welcoming. Freddie was like, dude, I'm looking forward to working with you. What's up, man? And you're like instant friends, right? But what I observed was that the relationship that Kanan and Ezra have was the relationship that Freddie and Taylor have. So Taylor would be like, well, wait, explain to me how, because Luke isn't very good at the sword fighting. He's like, yeah, dude, that's the thing. It's not about that, man. Check this out. Oh, man, dude, Luke's coming from this place to this. And Freddie would be explaining the Force to Taylor. And then they would run a scene where Kanan is explaining how Ezra needs to be. Now, when Dave had Maul show up, and we did the sort of very kindly, sweet, compassionate Maul from Malachor, who, whether he's lying or not, we don't know. Always it's your identities, my friend. He put Taylor between me and Freddie. So what would happen is I would do this monologue as Maul to Taylor, where you're getting your gift for a reason. You must use it, and all this stuff. And then Dave would yell cut. And then Taylor would go, see, Freddie, this sounds right to me. Like, what's wrong with doing what Maul says? And Freddie's like, no, dude, that's the drop of the dark side. No, you can't do it. You can't do it. Action. Ezra, he's using you. And so the argument that was happening in those episodes was happening between takes. He's like, no, that's the trap. He's totally using you. Action. Ezra, he's using you. It's so funny. And I'm looking at Dave, and Dave is just like smiling. He's like, yeah, this is what I hoped would happen. 2 Star Wars nerds and Taylor between us, and me trying to talk him into the dark side, and Freddie trying to talk him into the good side. It's really, really cool.
That's extraordinary. He, I've really been a big fan of Dave Filoni stuff for a little while anyway. So, okay, just to aim it back to you, you know, you've like you're saying, you've been working in Star Wars. That's pretty much as up there as it gets, right? Like, that's how you know that you're kind of in the big leagues. What would you say was your most kind of valuable decision as an actor to get to that point where you could end up in something like Star Wars, right?
The most valuable decision when it comes to Star Wars is to take the mythology seriously enough to know that it isn't about you, right? Because if the Sith are all about themselves, and you don't want to be that way, then you really can't make this about you. And when you do, when you take a step back, the only thing that matters is really the story, and does the story inspire younger folks as it should? That's the most important thing. That's the thing. Are these because kids need hopeful stories. They need to know that bad things are going to happen. You're going to fall down. You're going to make mistakes. And you're going to fail. But you can get back up, and you can make yourself into a good person. And and once once you arrive, you keep fighting to do that. You keep trying to conquer the dark side within you. So as an actor, for me, certainly when it comes to the Star Wars stuff, I don't even really conceive of Maul being sort of my character or the son of Mortis or these characters are all bigger than the actors that play them. It's got to be a completely service based thing. It's got to be all about serving the story and serving the audience, and that's it. The end. That's and I suspect, I at least hope, I think that's why Lucasfilm keeps me around, because more than any other job, I try to subtract my ego from this, and it's a considerable ego, by the way. There are other jobs where I don't. So I'd be like, no, I'm going to impose my will here. I'm going to, when it comes to Star Wars, again, it's such a sort of a sacred mythology to our culture, our shared, monomyth world culture, that it's very, very important that I recognize that the story is bigger than all of us. So that's the choice that I made that I think has served me the best when it comes to Star Wars, and has made me understand how to play Maul. Because it's like every instinct I have as an actor or as a business person dealing with make the opposite choice for Maul. But it's all about him. It's me. It's I'm the most important person in the room. I'm the smartest. That type of thing. So yeah.
That's great. Speaking of kind of like younger selves and whatnot, if you could give your 21-year-old self any career advice, what would you say?
I would say hang in there, because it's a really tough business. We you go and you win the lottery on something, and you think that's necessarily going to that life has changed somehow, and that your world is suddenly things are easy, right? No, you've won the lottery. Now get back in line. You just keep. It feels like a Sisyphus thing a little bit, like you roll the boulder up the hill only to have it fall back down. But there are other ways to look at that stuff, right? There are, especially, for example, during this lockdown and stuff like that, I've spent most of my time thinking about how grateful I am to have been involved in these stories. And I'm such a huge George Lucas fan that, to be able to help tell his stories has been incredible. What would a Jedi do? Would a Jedi reflect on all the things that they want, but they don't necessarily think they're going to get, or would they sit back and think about all the things that have gone right and feel thankful for that? They'd probably do that. So I would tell younger me, hey, be patient, stick it out. These difficulties you're having now, ever really going to go away in totality. However, if you look at it the right way, you will accomplish some things that are meaningful to you, and that should be enough. So stick it out, slow and steady wins the race. And if you're looking at it the right way, you will have all the tools you need to make yourself happy. Because often people think, people who get into any kind of business or certainly acting or whatever, they're like, I just get that one role, then I'll be so happy because I'm miserable right now. But if I just make this happen, I'll be so happy. And the answer is no, you don't necessarily, because there'll always be a next thing that you want. There'll be a next thing beyond that, and then something else that you want over here, and something else that feels unsatisfying. It's all very much like the Sith, that hole in your heart. Well, you have to address this, and almost the only way you can address this is by giving, is by thinking of other people, doing something constructive, doing something that someone else can get something out of. Once you do that, you find that once you don't focus on yourself so much, you become a lot happier. And so yeah, this is the kind of advice that I would give myself at 21 years old. If you go back to 20 years old, the advice I would say is be like, hey, you see that movie you just saw in the theater, Phantom Menace? Yeah. You know how you don't think that it's possible to become an actor? Yeah. You know how you just met that guy, Ray Park, who played Darth Maul? Yeah. You know how you thought, how is that guy so lucky to be in a Star Wars movie? Yeah. Well, just give it 20 years, you can be voicing him in a Star Wars movie. It's kind of an interesting.
No, that's. I think that a lot of that's excellent advice, like you said, for a lot of different things, even outside of acting. Sorry, go on.
Sorry.
No.
Well, I was just going to say, doing the right thing oftentimes takes a little bit more imagination than doing the wrong thing. And I've certainly made some incredible mistakes and things that I'm really not happy about. Having said that, you can. If someone wants to make a go of this type of thing as an actor, you can do it. You can do it. But the best advice is figure out how to make yourself happy while pursuing it. Hobbies and relationships with people that are rather healthy and living your life. All of those things will help you because you won't be miserable as you are pursuing the acting thing. So.
No, I completely agree. Obviously, from a non-acting perspective, anyway. Do you have any specific warm-ups or anything that you do vocally before you go out and do a session in your back garden fortress?
Yeah, my fortress of solitude. Well, the theater training that I have, there are vocal warm-ups. Unfortunately, I don't do those that often. I definitely do sometimes. But if I'm doing a character like Sidious or something like that, there are times where this is really embarrassing. People should not do this. But I will go. Well, there was a character in an animated series that hasn't been really announced yet that I did, and I wanted him to have like a subsonic voice. And so every night before the record, I would go into my booth and I would yell, scream, and really give my voice a workout. Then drink a bunch of tea, go to sleep, and I wake up the next morning and have this huge lower register, and I go. So I've done that. That's kind of a warm up. It's not really the right way you're supposed to do it. It's the quick and easy path, the safe way, I guess.
Well, I guess. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just going to say, if you're a vocal artist, don't do that. Don't just scream and stuff like that. There are ways of achieving that where you can keep everything open and not damage your voice and give it a workout and then rest. Have that register. Some people drink a bunch of scotch and stuff or smoke to get that low register. I don't think that's a good idea. But
do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
So yeah, coming towards the end of the kind of questions, there are some kind of I've got a few kind of more getting inside your head kind of things about things that you like. So what purchase under $200 have you bought that's changed your life, and in what way?
Oh my God. I mean, I feel like an SM58 just to have a sort of old world standard microphone to sing some vocals into or something. uh, it's not necessarily a condenser mic that people want for a voice session, but you can get by with that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Speaking of voice stuff, that's it's probably yeah.
Yeah. So I assume some of those behind you are like films and stuff. Um, what book or film or game would you most recommend, and what draws you to it, excluding Star Wars this time?
Um, I like the Amber novels by Roger Zelazny. I like those. Also, getting into the Gentleman Bastards series. That's really really good. Any of these things would be wonderful to work on if they're ever traumatized, that type of thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Check out
I'll
those.
check those out myself. Okay, so the last kind of question. Um, what was the last time that you did something for the first time?
Seeing this for the first time, I feel like in some ways constantly because like last night, I don't know, this is meaningful to me. I took a song that I'd written and I started working on a chip tune version of it using just like old video game sounds to make the song. Never really done it, so it's cool. It made my song sound like an intimidating or Caliber 64 level. That was cool. I like do it better, but it's the first time I did it. Yeah, I mean a lot of first time things. Again, talking about music, like learning as you get older, you find out that there's an extraordinary depth of knowledge in just about every category. You know, but there is an infinite amount of wisdom that you can collect from doing any given thing. It's why there's professionals, then there's amateurs, right? When you're younger, because you don't know any of this, you kind of assume you kind of know everything, or I could do that. Oh, what can I do that? Oh, I could do that. We could do that. We could do that. Sort of that foolhardiness does sometimes serve you because you jump before you think. But as you get older, you start appreciating how much there is to learn about just about anything. I'm speaking about the music thing. Like right now, I'm learning about the the ins and outs of making a cassette. Like doing this old school analog thing. Now, I learned a lot about how to make a vinyl and did that for the first time a little while back. And it was a huge process, huge learning process. How do you produce and mix and master for a vinyl effectively? And then what do you have to keep in mind with, the physical limitations of the actual physical disc and, how to get the program material to fit on there and sound good and all that stuff. Learning the same thing about cassette, but again, you just when you dip your toe in, it's you think it's like a shallow pool, and it is an abyss of incredible forbidden knowledge that you can dive into. It's you can. I mean, and again, the rabbit holes. I'm now mixing metaphors, but yeah. I It's really really fun. And so, as you get older, you start realizing you don't know anything about anything because you realize there's just tons of knowledge you don't have. So hopefully that humbles you and makes you a little bit more effective because you're, at least looking to learn rather than thinking you know everything.
Well, I think that back at the office there are a few people who are really big audiophiles and also are big fans of your work, so I'm sure they'll be like thrilled to hear about that. Yeah, okay. So just to finish off, is there anything that you kind of want to promote or let people know about? I imagine there's stuff you can't talk about, but what are you up to?
Um, Promote. I mean, there's a bunch of projects that I can't talk about because they haven't really been announced. The Batman Unburied has been announced. My involvement in that has been announced, so I suppose we can promote that. That is a weird character, by the way. Very uncomfortable, strange. They kind of play the villain of the thing. So I'm looking forward to David Goyer as the head writer on that. So that's his return to Batman since the Dark Knight. So looking forward to seeing how that turned out. It was one of the most bizarre characters I've ever played. But if we're talking promotion, Revenge of the Crashtones is coming on cassette. It is a unique version of, there's the CD version, there's the vinyl version, and I thought for the cassette it might be really fun to do a unique version of the album. So a couple of the songs have editorial changes and or arrangement changes and or mix changes. I think all of the songs were touched a little bit, but people might not hear the difference. I do. But then some songs have very definite differences. So I thought it'd be really cool if there was a unique version of the record that's on the cassette. But samwitwer.com is where you can find all of this stuff and get into it. But the Crashtones is my pet project. It's my imaginary band, and I enjoy doing it.
I love the look of the cassette. That's awesome. I'll definitely make sure to get it, inserted wherever it needs to be inserted to get people.
The cassette isn't out just yet. It's coming, but the vinyl and the CD and the digital release of Revenge of the Crashtones is already out.
That's awesome. So. That's fantastic. Well, it's been really, really good to chat.